Yeah, welcome also from my side. So you see, my attire is a bit more casual than on the other photo. So this is my costume I only wear for graduation ceremony. So maybe that is something you're going to see in a minute. So I'm very happy to be here and answer your questions and probably provide some insights. And I'm not alone, as you can see. We have many faces who have much more fancy backgrounds than I have with my very old laptop that cannot manage these funky backgrounds. So if I go through the order I see on my laptop, I see Sandra Transchel here with the Grimaldi ship in the background, which is actually moored on the other side of the Elbe River. So she can see it actually from her office. She has a corner office. I don't have a corner office. I just see a backyard. But Sandra has a corner office and can see the ship. And while not looking outside the window, she's a professor for supply chain management. And also she's the academic director of our Master of Science in Global Logistics and Supply Chain Management program. Then we have Alexander Himme, who is the academic director of the bachelor and also a professor for management accounting. We have Henrik Leopold, who just joined us last year. He's a management information systems professor. And we have Moritz Petersen, who is, for now, a sustainable management senior researcher, but there will be some further title added to his name very soon, I heard. And each of them is an expert in one of our profiles. So Alexander Himme for international management, Moritz Petersen for sustainable management, Sandra Transchel for supply chain management, and Henrik Leopold for management information systems. I'm, as a dean, I have to be not an expert, but to know a little bit of everything. And I hope I do. So in the 10 years of being at KLU, so I actually was there when the university was founded. That old I am, although the school is not so old, right? So that's fine. So I would suggest that we probably do a few questions, providing some insights, and then afterwards there's a Q&A where you can pose your questions. Let's see what you come up with. Maybe to start with, so that you get a somewhat an idea what we're talking about. You know, there have been further webinar events on each of the different profiles. Not all of you have attended them, and some are already a bit ago. So it may be good to get a better grip on, you know, what these profiles are about. So my first question into the round, and I would start with the sequence we see in the photos with Alex. If you should pick one course, if you should take one of the modules out of this profile that would really represent what this profile is about, the content is about, what would that be, and what is it about?
Yeah, thank you, Christian, for the question. I mean, I think in this profile international management, there are, every course is somehow a highlight, and that I could not be very lame by saying, of course, the highlight of the highlights is the course on international financial accounting, because I'm teaching that one. So it's a good course, but this would be very lame. So what I think is very characteristic for international management is the course on intercultural communication and management, right? So in this course, you will learn how you have to adapt your management styles depending on different cultures. You will really learn how you have to also change your negotiation behaviors and strategies when you work with different cultures. In the end, what we observe, where we have made some gut feeling, but here it's really in a structured approach where the professor will teach and really practice how cultures change corporate strategies and corporations in general, right? And what I think is also great about this course is what I learned from my colleague. He's doing it in a very interactive way, so he's doing lots of role plays and has many other interactive elements. And the good thing about that is, and this is what Nicole mentioned in the beginning, I mean, we have over 50% international students. So the professor does not have to make any kind of artificial or theoretical arrangements. He can simply use the cultural heterogeneity that's already there in the classroom, because there are many international students, so he can really actively demonstrate different cultural backgrounds just by using the students in the classroom. And I think this is always what I heard from the students, a very great experience. I think this is a very characteristic module of the profile international management.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Thanks, Alex. I think that's a great introduction to the program. So next up would be sustainable management. Now, sustainability, sustainable management, that certainly is a buzzword, a topic that comes up ever so often, but oftentimes it's not really clear what it really is about. So Moritz, can you give us an example with a course, with some content, what really is sort of a tangible subject of sustainable management?
So Alex puts me under pressure a bit now, because I will be the lame one who introduces his own course, but I know it very well. Maybe that's the reason why. So obviously all of these 4 courses are pretty good and important, but what sets the sustainable supply chain course apart is maybe that it integrates everything that you learn in the other courses. Because when you, as a student, learn how to manage organizations more sustainable and then work in a multinational company, sometime like Unilever across the street or some other, then you will notice that sustainability doesn't trickle down the supply chain, right? You really have to, it's not that you can put it on your supplier and then the supplier will force its next supplier to also be more sustainable. It doesn't work that way. And so it doesn't trickle down through the supply chain. But the problem is that the most severe violations of sustainability, like bad working conditions or whatever, happen at the supplier. So in this course, you will learn how to incentivize your suppliers and their suppliers to act like your own company also wants to act. So this is why I think this is a very central element in course that you should take there.
Okay, thanks. So you're already bridging to the next profile, and obviously if it's Kuhne Logistics University, Sandra has her home turf here. So Sandra, if you would get us, logistics is probably a term people have heard, but supply chain management is probably the more academic term, and as we understand it, a bit more broader. So if you could give us, a little insight into, what this contains and what would be a typical subject you would look into if you go for this profile.
Okay, first, I did not choose my course I'm teaching in the bachelor's program, also because probably nobody would have believed me that this is the most favorite. So I'm teaching the mathematics for business and economics first semester. So this is for sure a course which is not on the highlight list of most of the students. So also you put me in a very difficult situation to pick one course, right? Because it's very hard to say this course is the most important one, because supply chain management is such a broad field, and combines so many things. And when we look at the courses we have, they basically cover different topics in the field of supply chain management, right? Basically, in rough terms, supply chain management is matching supply with demand across the entire chain, from the point of origin or raw material suppliers, farmers, agriculture, where the products are coming from, basically down to the end consumer. So in supply chain management is looking at an efficient and effective management of the product flow, information flow throughout the supply chain. And therefore, when you look at the courses, what does it include? It is first the transportation management. You have to transport the products. Also here you look into cost efficiency arguments and also touch sustainability issues. And these are more and more important to look at. There's also questions like inventory management, warehousing, where to put inventories, how much inventory you should have in each location. We all experienced during Corona the stockout situations in the supermarkets. So there's for sure also it's part of the supply chain management field. And operations management looks then more on operational aspects. So therefore, there's not this one favorite one. Supply chain management is really a very broad topic, connecting various fields, and these 4 courses that you see here: transportation management, supply chain strategies, inventory, warehousing, and operations, are basically 4 elements of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Sandra. So that's sort of the nature of chains, of supply chains, that all elements are relevant. And relevant is also, I think, the 4th profile that we have, management information systems, not just because I'm teaching a course there, and maybe Henrik is picking that one to highlight it, if he's clever. But Henrik, if you want to make a little spotlight, what can we expect in management information systems?
Yes, thanks. I will try to highlight that. I hope you can hear me. My neighbor just decided to start drilling. I hope you can hear me anyways. Yeah, let me first emphasize. So if you look at these courses, I hope that you don't get scared. So maybe to be clear, we are fully aware that you do not come to kill you or considering to come to kill you because you want to become a programmer or a system developer. We are fully aware of that. Nevertheless, we are convinced that this track can provide you with a very important perspective, and that is, of course, the perspective of how information technology changes and shapes how organizations are doing business. I mean, the buzzword digitization is around everywhere, and of course, everything is now based on AI, even if it's not. So let me pick one course, and I will not pick yours. I'm sorry for that. I will pick the data integration preparation course, which I'm teaching myself. And what's the purpose of such a course? Or the idea of this course is that we, as a general trend, observe that a lot of organizations have data, right? So they have realized years ago that would be a very nice idea to collect data. And now they have data, and now there is a strong urge to turn data into value. So what does it mean? They feel, okay, we have collected all this data. Can we improve our decisions? Can we improve planning? Can we simply do better by using this data? And part of this course is to show how this works, how basically we can use data to do better. And that involves topics such as databases, business intelligence, data warehousing. So where all this data comes together, and what I do in this course and also in the other courses I give is really take a hands-on perspective. So I really want to enable you to understand how certain tools work and how you can really use tools to get insights you probably couldn't get before. And thereby develop an understanding, and at least I believe, Kelly believes, that this is next to the other three profiles a very interesting perspective that can give you an edge, because I think information technology is really everywhere these days.
Okay, thank you, Henrik. So I think we already got now a great overview on a bit of the content side of these programs. But now, as we heard, it's not just about academics. It's also management is a subject that needs to be applied. And so our program is designed in a way that you basically can do everything in the business field afterwards, right? So you can study in all sorts of specializations. You can go for all sorts of professions. But of course, with picking one or the other profile, there may be a little edge you have in certain fields for certain jobs, for certain first positions. So that would be like my second question, to make it a bit more tangible for our audience. So what type of jobs, what type of positions could you particularly aim for if you pick one or the other profile? So again, maybe if we start again with Alexander. So if I go for international management, what are like typical career steps that I can take after having chosen this profile?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Christian. Maybe Nicole, you could go back to this overview of the profile lines and the profiles, because I think for international management, it's already a specialization, but it's still somehow offering flexibility, because if you look through the profile lines and the international management element, I think you will find more or less three relevant traits, because one is you see international finance, international financial accounting, and on top of that you have already in this general elementary courses fundamentals of accounting and corporate finance. So that means that you probably would be well equipped to go for a junior position in the field of accounting, finance, auditing, right? So just to make it tangible, as Christian mentioned, what I did, I looked at Stepstone to look for some job advertisements, and I looked specifically for, okay, are they asking for a bachelor in business administration with a focus on international management? And for example, At KPMG, they said we look for a junior consultant in accounting and reporting advisory, and they're explicitly mentioning knowledge in the field of international finance, international financial accounting. The second thing is what you also find there is you see this human resource management in the general profile line, human and environment, plus what I already mentioned in the first question round, intercultural communication and management. So that means you have probably also a possibility to apply for HR positions, right? So like, for example, what I have seen here is a manager of international human resources at Bosch. Well, maybe this would be interesting. Or you become a junior expert HR manager at BASF, where they're also mentioning that they are working on international teams or work with international teams. And then maybe last but not least, you have in the general courses, you have marketing, and then you see there in the profile line empirical research methods, plus you see consumer behavior. Yes, of course, then you are probably also well equipped to go for something in the field of marketing or branding. Like, for example, Daimler is looking for a junior international marketing manager. Okay, that may fit, yeah. Or Henke, also having lots of strong global brands, is looking for a junior global brand manager, right? So when it comes to marketing, developing brands, developing especially global brands, where you have to understand how consumers behave in different countries, then this may be also something. So this would be typical opportunities where if I would be a student and have a profile in international management, where I probably would try to apply for. Okay,
thanks, Alexander. And if I remember correctly, all the brands you mentioned, I think we have students at all of these places, right? So yes. KPMG, I remember quite a bit, Daimler, BMW, so all the car manufacturers, Bosch. So that seems to be mapping what we see actually with the graduates. Now, with sustainable management, that's probably a bit newer field, right? So where you don't have like this typical career path of, I don't know, finance guy who ends up as a CFO or marketing person who ends up at head of sales or something. So Moritz, could you give us an idea where, sustainable management, in what industries or in what positions you would be very qualified if you had taken this profile?
Sure. So the good thing about this profile is that you're obviously essentially qualified for every kind of management job, but there's one thing that most of our students that take this profile or work study now in similar courses, one career path that they experience for the first time, and this is the nonprofit sector, right? Where you are not what was it, Alex, junior global brand manager for Henkel and work all day to make Henkel's shareholder even wealthier, but where you use your skills and the time you have to help people in need. And examples of such, so all kinds of NGOs that are in all kinds of fields are looking for people with decent management and supply chain skills. And examples for that are Doctors Without Borders or the World Food Program or whatever you can think of as supply chain managers, program managers. These organizations usually are in severe need for highly qualified management staff.
Okay. Thanks. And it's maybe worth mentioning that we have, for example, another colleague, Maria Biziou, who is one of the leading global experts on humanitarian logistics. And there we work, I think, quite a bit with United Nations organizations, World Food Program, the Refugee High Commissioner, and so on. So, and as you say, there certainly is a need for these type of skills. Now, supply chain management, again, as Sandra has already pointed out, offers so wide a range of potential functions. So could you give us like a few typical jobs, the typical entry points for students who might have chosen this profile and then are specifically qualified for certain positions?
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Yes, as I mentioned before, that SCM is a very, very broad field, and I also experienced in the past having interviews with potential bachelor candidates that for some of them, it's not really clear what supply chain management is. And if I explain that, then okay, well, it's very broad. And I did the same thing as Alex did. I took a look into Stepstone to find, okay, what kind of jobs are out there. So, and just to mention a few, right? You can, of course, start in a classical logistics company like Kühne & Nagel for the logistics planner, transportation manager. So these, when you ask somebody what is logistics, and they tell you it's transport. But there are other jobs, like in all companies who basically produce product, they need supply chain analyst. I found there's, for example, there's a supply chain planner at HelloFresh, right? HelloFresh was a couple of years ago a startup. They also have to organize their logistics, how they deliver the products to their consumers. Others is Amazon is looking for a third-party logistics account manager in Nuremberg. So third-party logistics management. There is a supply chain planner at a company called Sysmos. It's for healthcare company. I found another supply chain or a customer supply chain coordinator and a healthcare company called Novozymes in Berlin. Or this is what I think will increase. Stada is also a pharma company looking for a global supply chain risk management or risk manager. So I think this is also a field, especially after the Corona situation, that many companies have to rethink their supply chain risk management. Or stock manager, I found here at OBI. But I mentioned inventory management is very important. You don't want to have too much. You don't want to have too little, right? How to organize inventories in complex networks. But also, basically, you can also go into the consultancy business. I found here, Ernst & Young is looking for a consultant, supply chain management or supply chain operations planning area. So therefore, with the bachelor degree or with the supply chain management degree, you have a very broad spectrum of different types of jobs, from a pure logistics industry into other companies, automotive companies, pharma companies, even startups. We had bachelor students, they went immediately into a startup business. Afterwards, also managing logistics and operations and with new innovative ideas and technologies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Sandra. So we see a broad range, you know, from students as graduating as bachelor with the supply chain focus and then ending up as director of operations of, you know, a freight hub or something in Hong Kong. So to, you know, pharmaceuticals, I think it's a topic that, for example, Kai Holberg, a colleague, is working on, you know, avoiding these stockouts that we have been experiencing, particularly during the Corona times. Now, management information systems now has, I think, the world open to it, right? So tech obviously is a hot topic, and there are many jobs out there. So Henrik, what type of level, what type of positions are we looking for graduates from a business administration program, bachelor, with these kind of flavor of management information systems? Where do you end up at what areas and what functions?
Yeah, so I think in general, of course, as you already said, IT is somehow everywhere. So I think there are a lot of the jobs that have been mentioned exist with a particular IT flavor, right? And so especially in a consultancy business, I see that a lot, that of course you can become a consultant without any particular focus on IT. But since a lot of consulting companies dealing with problems that are somehow related to IT or data management, they highly appreciate people with a certain specialization. So I think becoming a consultant or a business analyst in that area, I think is something very, very realistic. And I think that would really also give a particular edge, right? So I think my feeling is that this is a very straightforward choice. Of course, there are more, more specialized jobs also where I see former graduates or friends of mine also, right? So the entire area of process management, where we're interested in how our operations going from a quantitative, but also from a more IT perspective. I can imagine that something like a junior process manager, process analyst is something that's interesting. Kind of related would be quality management. I think these are really jobs where this kind of knowledge would be highly appreciated. And of course, the notion of a data scientist is something that is really new. So there are hardly any people out there that have a bachelor in data science, right? So that hardly exists. It does exist these days. And there are a lot of topics that are not necessarily on the very technical side, but also on the more strategic side. They're in startups. So In Berlin, there are a lot of startups, for instance. So Sandra mentioned HelloFresh, a lot of these Deliveroo and Delivery Heroes. So they have a strong data science perspective in the sense of that they would like to understand what their customers want, when they want it. And there is an entire department that is interested in developing a strategy, right? So you don't need to be the person that is actually doing the statistical programming work, but they also want people who take a more strategic perspective. So I expect these kind of data science related, but not purely data science focused jobs are very interesting options. And the last thing I want to mention is, of course, things that are somehow related to IT strategy that are more on a strategic level. So you need all the things that you have learned at KLU plus the specific IT related knowledge, and of course, depending on your focus and on your experience, it's going to be rather junior jobs in the beginning. But I think all these directions are interesting and realistic options.
Okay, thanks. So I think in summary, what we can say is that, and that also it sets us apart from other schools, is that there is not this streamlined one size type of KLU graduate, but we have, very diverse students, not just, coming in, but also coming out. So that the jobs where they end up are, in terms of industries, in terms of functions, in terms of focus, very different. And so depending also on the profiles, that as we heard, has a full range of things, and that is also reflected in our faculty. So quite a few of us have a background, for example, in professional services, so consulting. We have colleagues who work for Boston Consulting, from McKinsey, Booth and Company, and so on. We have others who work for large corporates, and we have colleagues who have very close relationships and quite some experience in the NGO part. And also, of course, the tech and startup scene is relevant. So I, for example, have this background in having my own startup, but also working now as a non-executive director for a big unicorn startup and stuff. So we have, I think, quite a diverse network. And it's not that, KLU a graduate is like whatever this type of, you have to go to McKinsey or you have to go to Goldman Sachs type of person, but there's the full range. And that leads me to the next topic that we already see here. So now the first job is only a first step, and that's also a typical question now out of the positions that you start here at KLU, that you say you graduate from the bachelor, and then about a third of our students directly go into a job and then rise up the ranks. About a third continue here at KLU in a master's program, and about another third go abroad to other top schools for their master's degree. So you can enter a job after the bachelor, but also you can, of course, continue at any top place for studying. But say, if you look at your life being 20 or something, or 19 or 18 or whatever, how old you are, and you look ahead, then of course there are broader topics, right? So just beyond the first job, topics that will be out there in not just 2025, but 2030, 2050. So these huge macro trends in the world, and that would be interesting for me. Like if you look into these, say, more mid to long term developments that we observe, how does your profile, how does the specific profile help you to adapt to this, to look ahead, and maybe also to adapt in 10 years or 20 years time to these challenges that we face? And again, Alex, starting with you, for the international management perspective, topics like globalization or something that may be around, how do you see that? How is that kind of laying the groundworks for like the mid to long term career, and also the mid to long term developments that we're going to observe during your professional career if you are a KLU graduate?
I think this is a very relevant question, and maybe I would like to say we have maybe in some countries right now a kind of micro trend, right? If you look in the United States, we have the idea of isolation, right? And America first, and we see this in some other countries as well. But what you already mentioned, Christian, this idea of globalization, which has its pros, but also its cons. But the question is if there is a better solution to it. And now, personally, if I just take my international accounting perspective, I mean, what I've observed in the last 5 to 10 years is a huge change in how we integrate on a global level. I mean, business information, financial information is somehow the lifeblood of the global economy. And this was the case in the past. It's now, if you observe, there are some crises and how everything is interrelated, everything is cross-border investment. This will go on, right? I mean, there are some microtrends, but microtrends means this will go away. But what will be stable over the next 10, 15 years is that we more or less will speak one language when it comes to, for example, financial information, how we read financial information. So what I teach, for example, in my class is this international accounting standards, and they have been developed in the recent past, and they are currently changing, and now over 120 countries are using that. So there are still, let's say, 80 countries to use it, but this will happen. And so in 10, 15 years, everybody, when it comes to financial information, will speak that language. And the same goes for marketing or for HR, right? I mean, everything will become much more integrated. You will work in international teams. If you want to develop a brand, you have to understand how customers behave in different countries, and everything can be observed on an international level. Also, the customers become much more educated on a global level. So globalization is a buzzword, but this will stay. It will be present for the next 50, 100, whatever years. So that's why I think it's good if you have not just a gut feeling about what international management is, but if you really have then some tools and understand how you manage companies at the international level. This is what you learn in this profile.
Okay, thanks, Alex. So Moritz, if you look ahead, the big topics obviously out there, right? We've seen Greta, we've seen global warming, discussions on climate change. How do you cater to this? How do you prepare your graduates, your students for like the 10, 20, 30 years to come, and obviously maybe some major changes that we see in the economy and the environment surrounding it?
So obviously, sustainability is already important today, right? But as you've maybe seen in my test lecture, that it will be even more important in the decades to come if we don't act today, right? If you only look at the CO2 emissions for logistics, for example, we're not on the right path. We're not decreasing them, but they are continuously increasing. So companies are just one part of the entire puzzle of solving these non-sustainable developments that we witness today, but they are a quite essential part. And the public expectation, and also the expectation from policymakers towards the more sustainable actions of companies, will increase over the next decades. So if you know what to do in terms of sustainability today in a company, you have, I would say, a pretty safe jobs, because you will be quite important over the next years. And well, there was a time when we saw at these non-sustainable developments and said, oh, these challenges are so large, we don't know how to tackle them. We have seen this year with this COVID mess that the world can act pretty decisively if it wants. And we have to kind of transfer this courage that governments and companies have shown now towards sustainability. So it's important now, but there is a lot of work to do in this field over the next decades.
Okay, thanks, Henrik. Now, Sandra, you also, like obviously, logistics supply chain has been part of a big debate, and there are now like people looking ahead, thinking, okay, will we kind of see a localization again, or will we see at least a regionalization again of, for example, supply chains, or will it continue? Will there be any place for huge container vessels emitting lots of whatever emissions in this world? So where does the supply chain profile help us to tackle these huge challenges that we're going to face in the decades to come?
Well, thanks, Christian. For me, so I basically localized 3 areas where I think, especially in the next 10, 20, 30 years, but as Moritz was saying, some started already right now, so where supply chain management will have to. So one is, of course, sustainability. Well, this is also something in no business area, you basically can go around. So even logistics companies like our next door company, Kühne Nagel, they are now heavily investing into being more sustainable, whatever that means. That basically can be then analyzed in a program, in a supply chain specialization on the bachelor's, maybe even in the master's level. This is one aspect. The second one is the whole development in the field of digitalization. So that connects, well, probably what Henrik will say in a minute. So the fast development or fast technological development in engineering already shows us what is technologically possible, right? So we have autonomous driving vehicles. We have, I don't know, machine learning techniques. Basically, they recognize your language, their face recognition, they're all kinds of things that is technologically possible, but that is not really embedded in today's supply chain. So the question is, how can companies better to use these technologies to improve their processes, supply chain processes and logistics processes? That has something to do with understanding a little bit the technology. You don't need to be an engineer, but you have to be able to talk also to these guys to embed that into improving our processes. It has to do with collecting data. As Henrik was saying, analyzing data is one thing, or basically getting the data and then seeing that it's one thing, then understanding that and transferring that into supply chain logistics or management languages is a totally different aspect. And how can we use these data to improve our processes? So this is definitely something which moves very fast, especially because of the technology. The improvement is much faster than basically business companies pick up the improvement of processes. And the last thing is that is the outcome, I think, from the Corona crisis, which is also not really a new topic, but this will come up. So there's a very well-known professor from Stanford who already came up 10, 15 years ago with these, he called it AAA supply chain, that supply chains need to be agile, adaptive, and aligned. So these alignment things. So I think supply chains will have to think more how to be more resilient when it comes to these kind of effects like Corona crisis we see right now. So many companies saw an economy drop or demand drop from one day to the other. The question is, which companies are agile enough, which supply chains are agile enough and resilient enough to be back in business and as fast as. So that's the agility, adaptability, and the alignment of supply chains will become more and more important in the next, and not just a couple of years, but really the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Okay, thanks, Sandra. So now, Henrik, obviously we're entering the decades of data, yeah, and so. And certainly, there are some fears, there's some opportunities, some people are shivering. Also, what we see now with apps tracking people and so on. So what's your take? Where are the chances that people who understand the information systems can flourish, where they can pick up opportunities, or maybe also realize, the pitfalls and avoid certain traps? So how do we prepare our students for these things to come in the tech field?
Yeah, so I will try to make it short, also for the sake of time, and also because I think that I hope you all believe me that obviously digitization is something that's happening, right? So the digital transformation, there is the urge to become more digital. That obviously requires knowledge, that requires people who understand how things work when they're digital, what it means to manage data, what it means to connect data, what it means to make decisions based on data. Also point you briefly touch upon, I mean, there are also implications that we need to understand. So you don't only need to be a person who can develop a machine learning model, but we also need people who understand where they can be used, when they should be used, and maybe also when they should not be used. Yeah, so obviously making automated decisions has also negative implications. And I think all the entire digital transformation with respect to processes, also with respect to how decisions are being made, I think this is something that we will experience. We're experiencing right now in some areas faster than in others. But I think this is very, it's a pressing, not issue, but it's really something that's happening. And I think having the background, a little bit of this background that we provide will be very, very helpful to really participate in shape instead of just, be watching, so to say. So that's why I think this kind of knowledge that we provide in this track is very valuable.
Thanks, Henrik. And I think that's a very valid point that, we try to instill knowledge and capabilities into you that you are able to drive developments rather than be driven, right? So that you manage data and computers rather than you are managed by computers and data. And I think this is essential if you want to be a self-determined person in the decades to come, that you really are managing this process. Okay, so as a summary, very quickly, in the interest of time, so we don't want to make here any pitch or something that you say this is better than the other one. So I'll save some final words for me, because I developed all of these profiles, so they're all my children and I love them equally. And I think that all of them, and I hope you heard this, have their relevance and have this unique part that will help you prepare. So that makes your choice hard, which one to pick. I would have a hard time picking one. So, but the good thing is that even if you pick a certain profile, you'll still be able to have certain modules from the other parts. So you may see this in the curriculum that half of these specialization courses are exclusive for the respective profile, and the other half, so these would be the if you see the graphic here, the bottom 8 lectures, they are available for all the other profiles as well. Yeah, so you can pick and choose. You can either go for all 4 modules of your profile, or you can choose, for example, up to 2 from others. Or if you are going for what we call the intensive track, where you are gonna 210 instead of 180 ECTS, then you have the chance to even choose 2 more of these electives, and that would probably be the one I would go for, to have more options, because I find all of these 16 topics really interesting. And to me, I think they all will be very important for preparation, looking at the years to come. Okay, so that was, thank you to the 4 colleagues, lots of inputs from our side.